نحمده ونصلي على رسول النبي الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين، يا خاتم النبيين، يا شفيع المذنبين، يا أنيس الغريبين، يا رحمة للعالمين. صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم. So last week, we spoke a little bit about some of the progeny or the lineage of progeny of Imam Hassan al-Islam, and I'm going to reiterate some points there and also throw in a few other points as well, inshallah, and then we'll get started on Imam Musa Kazim, who is the son of Imam Jafar Sadiq al-Salam. So, when we look at like Imam Hassan al-Salam, as we mentioned, his son Hassan Muthanna, which basically means the second Hassan al-Salam, he is born the year of the Khilafah of Imam Hassan al-Islam, which is the year 40 Hijri. So he's born that year, and so for the first 10 years of his life, he spends his time with his father, Imam Hassan al-Islam, being raised by him. And then when he's 10, year 50 Hijri, is when his father is poisoned and martyred. It's interesting. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is perfection and completion. And so we see also, within his lineage, or within his progeny, this perfection and completion. So we look at Imam Hassan al-Islam, he's given that secret martyrdom. So he's poisoned, so that secret martyrdom. So it's still martyrdom. We look at Imam Hussein al-Islam, and he is, openly martyred. And so, so the two of them combined, as we've talked about before, from the waist or from the chest up, Imam Hassan al-Islam is a perfect copy of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And from the chest down, Imam Hussein al-Islam is a perfect copy of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So the two of them together are complete. And so Imam Hassan Muthanna spends the first 10 years of his life under the tutelage and the receiving education directly from his father. And then when his father is martyred, he now is studying and learning and being raised by his uncle Imam Hussein al-Islam, until Imam Hussein al-Islam, of course, is martyred. And of course, Imam Hussein al-Islam, his son is Imam Zain al-Abidin. And you see these two cousins, Imam Hassan Muthanna and Imam Zain al-Abidin, they are roughly about the same age. So there's like a couple of years difference between the two of them. And interestingly, they also pass at the same time, or roughly the same time. Imam Zain al-Abidin is martyred through poisoning, year 95 Hijri. Imam Hassan Muthanna, year 96 Hijri. And of course, the powers to be never liked them, and were always, giving them trouble. And so at this point, we're, still Banu Umayyah. And so Abdul Malik, at one time, someone had told Abdul Malik that Imam Hassan Muthanna is writing letters to the people of Iraq, to the people of Kufa, plotting a coup on your government, trying to overthrow your government. So Abdul Malik, he sends word to the governor of Medina, at that time, his man, Hisham bin Ismail. And the orders were to basically call him in and interrogate him and flog him, and if it ends up being true, then kill him. So basically whip him to confession, and once he confesses, then kill him. And so, Imam Hassan Muthanna is called to the governor's court, he calmly goes, these are people whose complete reliance is on Allah. They don't fear anything except for their Lord. These are not just awliya Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran about the awliya Allah, about His friends, la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun, that on them is no fear nor grief. So these people aren't just awliya Allah, these are the makers of awliya Allah. These are the ones who make others the friends of Allah. So he calmly goes, and when he gets there, Imam Zain al-Abidin is also there. He's been called in for some other reason. Again, they were always harassed. And so Imam Zain al-Abidin and them are, the two of them are waiting, and Hisham gets distracted with some other thing, and he's, kind of looking at someone else and talking to somebody else. And in the meantime, Imam Zain al-Abidin, he goes to Imam Hassan Muthanna, he says, look, when he calls you, then read this dua, or this zikr, and because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that whoever reads this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take away any calamity from him. And the dua is actually mentioned in Sahih Bukhari. The whole incident is not, but the dua itself is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari. And the dua is La ilaha illallah al-halim al-kareem, La ilaha illallah al-ali al-azim, Subhanallah Rabb as-samawat as-sabi wa Rabb al-arsh al-azim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil alameen. So when he is called, he reads the dua. Hisham looks at him. He says, you don't look like anyone who's going to cause any trouble. So this is just, whoever mentioned this to the king, he doesn't know what he's talking about. You're just looking at you, I know you're not a troublemaker. So you can go. And he tells the people, the people in his court that are telling him, you know what the orders are, you're supposed to whip him into confession. He said, no, I'll write a letter to Abdul Malik bin Marwan, the king, and I'll deal with it myself. And he writes the letter. He says, look, you're going on hearsay, and I'm dealing with what I'm seeing in reality, and I tell you, he's not causing any trouble. So the dua again is La ilaha illallah al-halim al-kareem, La ilaha illallah al-ali al-azim, Subhanallah Rabb as-samawat as-sabi wa Rabb al-arsh al-azim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil alameen. So for those who don't remember it, they can go back and look at the video and see the dua, inshallah. But so, again, he recites this dua and he leaves. But these are also the people that the kings fear the most. Because again, these are the people who are leading the people in the right direction. These are the people who are taking the people, away from all of the fitna, defending them against the fitna, allowing them to see and recognize the fitna that is there. And the kings themselves are the fitna. Those are the people who thrive off of off of keeping the people oppressed and in commotion. So, when he was younger, after, he grows a little bit, he goes to his uncle and says that, I want to get married. So his uncle says, Imam Hussein al-Islam says, look, I have two daughters that are ready for marriage, Fatima Sughra and Sukaina. So you choose. And he, being bashful, didn't say anything. He just lowered his head. So Imam Hussein al-Islam says, well, I think Fatima, because she is the most accurate copy of my mother, Fatima Kubra, which is the Fatima Salamullah alayha, both in appearance and in character, that you will marry her. So then he married Fatima Sughra. And from that marriage, he had 3 sons. The oldest is Abdullah Mad. The next one is Hassan also Hassan the third, and then Ibrahim. So these three were from that marriage. And so Abdullah Ma'ad, who's the main one, there's a lot of differences of opinion when you look throughout history as to when someone was born. Less differences of opinion when they passed away or when they were martyred, which, from a standpoint of just normal things, that's understandable, because when people are born, it's like, you got so many other distractions going on. When they die, you can say, oh yeah, they died the year that this happened. Of course, with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we know he was born in the year of the elephant, because that major event that happened that year. So, as we mentioned, Abdullah Ma'ad radiallahu anhu, alayhi salam, he is the one who, taught his. So these are people who were very much against the establishment, because the establishment was oppressive to the people in as a whole. And so eventually, he will get his sons. They will lead, or they will be part of an uprising against Banu Umayyah. And part of that promise that Banu Abbas had made to them was that when Banu Umayyah is overthrown, then the rule would come to the son of Imam Abdullah Ma'ad, which is Imam Muhammad ibn Zakiyah. But of course they reneged, and we spoke about that last week. And we mentioned that the son of Imam Muhammad ibn Zakiyah is Imam Abdullah Shah Ghazi, who's buried on the coast in Karachi. And it's very interesting, because if you go to his mazar, or his burial place, it's actually below the water level, but the water doesn't come in. He's buried basically right there on the coast. I mean, you can see the sea, and he's well below. And this is also where he used to make salat and do his ibadah and zikr. Well below sea level, but and right on the coast, but there's no water coming in. And this is keramat, which is an extension of the signs of the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, as we mentioned last week, Imam Muhammad ibn Zakiyah was eventually martyred. He led the uprising after Banu Abbas took over. They reneged on their agreement. They started killing and torturing the household of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. That's why many of the Sayyids had to leave. So this is why you see so many Sayyids in Yemen, in the subcontinent, in Egypt and North Africa, and other places other than central, what was at that time, what we consider central Muslim empire, because wherever they were being found, they were being sought out and tortured or killed, and so many of them had to leave. So a lot of people say, well, why are there so many Sayyids, here or there? Well, that's why. That's the explanation for why that happened. So any questions on that before I shift over to Imam Musa Kazim? Like I said, this is just a little bit of reiteration from last week. So now Imam Musa Kazim alayhi salam, he is the son of Imam Ja'far Sadiq. He is not the oldest son, he's one of the younger sons of Imam Ja'far Sadiq. So of course Imam Ja'far Sadiq is the son of Imam Muhammad Baqir, who is the son of Imam Zain al-Abidin, who is the son of Imam Hussein al-Islam, who is the son of Ali radiallahu anhu, who is the son of Abu Talib, and of course Imam Hussein al-Islam is the son of Ali and the son of the Fatima alayhi salam. So this is his lineage to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he's born according to most narrations, somewhere around 128 Hijri. Okay. As we mentioned when Imam Jafar, spoke about Imam Jafar Sadiq. Imam Jafar Sadiq was martyred year 148 Hijri. He was poisoned by the king Mansur, Jafar Mansur. A lot of people call Khalifa Mansur, Khalifa this. They were not Khalifas. Khilafah ended with Imam Hassan al-Islam. After that, it's all kings until, the Ottomans fell, and now it's all tyrants. Even the kings, the Rasulullah referred to them as Jabr, meaning forceful kings. These were kings, if you look throughout this kingship period, they were not, or rather the most of them, you had exceptions, but most of them were not decent people. Umar bin Abdulaziz, Mahmud Ghaznavi, some of these others were exceptions to the rule. So these people were not exceptions to the rule, or at least most of them were not. The rule was that most of them were oppressive kings. So, again, even though Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam was not directly involved in any uprising or even supporting any uprising, but the kings knew that he's teaching the people the truth, which liberates the people's hearts, and then we can't control them. So this is why, he's poisoned in the year 148. So basically, Imam Musa Kazim spent 20 years under the tutelage of his father, Imam Jafar Sadiq. And to understand this, or rather to understand the significance of this, Imam Abu Hanifa, rahmatullahi alayhi, he spent 2 years under the tutelage of Imam Jafar Sadiq. And after those 2 years, Imam Abu Hanifa, he says that if I had not had those two, I would have been destroyed. So simply by spending 2 years, under the tutelage of Imam Jafar Sadiq, Imam Abu Hanifa, the great Imam Abu Hanifa, the ocean of knowledge, makes this statement. Imam Musa Kazim spends 20 years studying from his father. At a time, when, the character, the personality of somebody is established. So, he is literally, a copy of those who came before him. And again, we mentioned those who came before him. And that lineage goes back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this gets back to that point where Imam Zain al-Abidin in the Masjid in Damascus, he says that we, Ahlul Bayt, are distinguished with 6 qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has distinguished us with: knowledge, forbearance, generosity, eloquence, courage, and love in the hearts of the believers, so that the believers love them. And this is also why all these kings feared them, because they knew that these are the people who have that natural attraction, that the people are naturally attracted to them, they love them. And so now when we want to oppress the people, these are the people that they will go and seek aid from. And if they go to them, then Allah's help will come, and then the kings knew, well, then we're in trouble. So again, these 6 qualities are very important to remember when we're talking about these people, because these are the people. So I should, even though I'm going to keep reiterating those qualities, when I'm talking, it doesn't matter if I'm talking about, Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam Hussein al-Islam, Imam Musa Kazim, Imam Ali Rida, Imam Hassan Askari. Doesn't matter which one I'm talking about, they have those qualities. Right? So, so again, he spends these 20 years under the tutelage of his father. And his father, is the teacher of teachers. As we said, all knowledge comes back to him. irregardless of whether it's religious knowledges, whether it's the Quran, the grammar, the tafsir, the hadith, all of that comes back to him. All, the teachers of teachers. And it doesn't matter whether it's physics, astronomy, anatomy, biology, chemistry, all of those teachers also come back to him. Mathematics, if you look at the pioneers in these fields, there is a connection as far as teachers to teachers back to Imam Jafar Sadiq. So Imam Jafar Sadiq, of course, he's teaching students who are with him, and they come, they study, then they go. Imam Musa Kazim is being taught not just outside the house, but inside the house. So again, a perfect image of his father. When he was a young boy, this person, he came to Imam Jafar Sadiq and he asked him, he says, who will be your heir? Who will take your place in this position when you pass on? And he said, sit down and you'll see in a minute. And a few minutes later, Imam Musa Kazim comes out of the house with a goat, a baby goat, on a leash. He's walking around with the baby goat, and as he comes out of the house, he tells the goat, he tells the goat to make sajda to Allah, and the baby goat, he makes sajda. And so then Imam Jafar Sadiq, he says, Alhamdulillah, praise Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has even made the animals that we keep company with, subservient to him. This gets back to keeping good company. So even the animals that they kept company with were animals who were subservient to Allah. So the people they kept company with were people who were servants of Allah. This is that statement of Rasulullah when he said, "As-suhbatu ta'assur," that your company has an effect on you. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he says that kunu ma'as sadiqeen, keep the company of those who are truthful. So this is why we should keep company. Good company is better than no company, but no company is better than bad company. Because if you surround yourself with people that are not good, eventually, and not even eventually, very quickly, it has an effect on you. Things that you normally would not do, things that you normally would consider bad, now you're kind of lukewarm about them because of the bad company you keep. Whereas if you keep good company, then again that affects you. So now you start seeing what is good and what is bad, and you start striving for what is good, and avoiding those things that are bad. Again, so here with Imam Musa Kazim, even the animals, because of his company, but of course Imam Jafar Sadiq is saying it differently. But literally because of his company, that animal, when he tells it to make sajda, it makes sajda. Okay. And it's a goat, of all things. And anyone who's raised goats knows, there's a saying in Urdu that if someone doesn't have any problems, let them raise goats. They'll know, or if someone has no worries, let them raise goats. Those goats will give them trouble. So, another time, this is when Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi was in Medina Munawwara. So at this point, Imam Musa Kazim is a young man, and he's making salat, but he's making salat in a place where people are just going in front of him, crossing in front of him. And of course, we know, the command of Rasulullah is that you shouldn't be doing that. If you see somebody making salat, but also if you start making salat, don't make salat in a place where people are going to be forced to cross in front of you. Which is why when people come in here, they should go over there, if there's room. And we have a lot of people, they come in, and it's empty, and they stop right there, right at the entrance, and they start making salat, right there. It's like, come on, and just shift over. It's not that complicated. But so he's making salat at a place where people are just going in front of him. And so Imam Abu Hanifa, he tells Imam Jafar Sadiq that, your son Musa Kazim, this is what's going on. So Imam Jafar Sadiq, he asks him, he says, you were making salat and the people were going in front of you. He says, the people may have been going in front of me, but they were not coming between me and my Lord. So he's making salat in such a manner, like Rasulullah said, as-salatul miraj al-mu'mineen, that salat is the miraj, or the ascension of the believer. When Rasulullah goes on the ascension, he, in the end, is in la makan, but even though in is not appropriate here, but lack of terms, he's in la makan, and there is nothing in la makan except for Allah. But again, Allah is not in la makan, Allah is, period. So again, this becomes an issue of language, but I think most people who understand what I'm trying to say or express. There is nothing between him and his Lord. So this is a gift on that night for the ummah of Rasulullah that we were not able to go with the Rasulullah, but if we connect ourselves to Rasulullah, because he also said, pray as you see me praying. He didn't say pray as I pray, because we can't pray the way he prayed. That's an impossibility. He says, pray as you see me praying. So when we're making our salat, when we stand, we should think, oh, I'm standing like this because Rasulullah stood like this. When I raise my hands, I should think, I'm raising my hands like this because Rasulullah raised his hands like this. When I tie my hands, the same thing. When I go into ruku, when I go into sajda, when I sit, when I do anything, any aspect of the salat, it should be, the mindset should be, I'm doing this because Rasulullah did it this way, did this. And so when I make that connection to Rasulullah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts me, and then all those curtains are removed. All those veils that are in front of me are removed. And I am truly standing before my Lord. Even though for Allah, again, there is no front or back or up or down. Allah is Allah. And we know this, but this again is to express, to help us try to understand. And so that's what he says. He says, yeah, they might have been crossing in front of me, but they did not come between me and my Lord. And so, of course, when he says this, Imam Jafar Sadiq is very pleased with him. So, again, these are those people who are given, who are chosen. And it's one thing, like for us, we strive, we do these things, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we're good, perhaps will give us some reward. These are the people who are chosen for those positions. And no one can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why did you give it to him and not to me? This is the error that Shaitan fell into with Adam alayhi salam. Why him and not me? Why, I've been worshiping you all this time and he hasn't even said the first Alhamdulillah, and why him and not me? Why are the angels bowing to him and not to me? This is Allah's will.
Just like Father Rahmat al-Jilani,
yes.
He was playing with the kids, the sound came, you didn't want for that.
Yes. Why him and not me? Exactly. That question of, well, he just came. Yeah. And this is part of that submission, that we submit. But these are also people, when we look at them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them this honor, but you see what they did to fulfill, the position, and to be thankful to Allah. Because again, we talk about them like all of this easy stuff, but we forget all the hardship they went through. Again, Imam Hussein al-Islam. I mean, who can do that? I mean, he sacrificed his whole family in front of him. And then they sacrificed him. He sacrificed himself. But also knowing what is going to happen to the women of the household. That they will be treated like prisoners of war, shackled and dragged through the streets. He still gave that sacrifice. So, we can complain, why them? Well, they showed us why them. And so the same thing with, Imam Musa Kazim. Yeah, he's brought up in with this knowledge and all of these things. But then with that comes the price of, because the king's being upset with you. And so this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels, they questioned Allah, that are you going to create? And he said, this are you going to place on earth this creation that's going to cause mischief and bloodshed? Well, we, praise you and honor you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's response was that you don't know what I know. He didn't say, no, they're not going to do bloodshed and mischief. Because you look throughout the world, what do we see? Mischief and bloodshed. But he said, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. You don't know what I know. Which tells us that he is acknowledging, yes, what you're saying is true. But again, there's another aspect of this. And this is when, when these righteous slaves of Allah, they take their stand, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds the angels, you remember when you asked, look at them. This is what you didn't know. These are the ones you didn't recognize. And so, Imam Musa Kazim, as I said, 128 Hijri is when he's born. So when he's like 4 years old is when Banu Umayyah is overthrown. So 132 Hijri is when Banu Umayyah is overthrown, Banu Abbas take over. So the first king of Banu Abbas, even though he knew he stole the rule from Ahlul Bayt, because the people rallied around Banu Abbas because they had promised to give the leadership to Ahlul Bayt. But he was still, I guess what you'd say from a king standpoint, somewhat lenient toward them. The second king, which was Mansur, Jafar Mansur, was not. So if you remember from last week, Mansur is the one who imprisoned Imam Abdullah Ma'ad, insisting that he tell him where his sons are, and after 3 years of imprisonment eventually he killed him. And then, so this is when the uprising took place. And so if you remember, and this gets back, I need to reiterate this, if you have to remember the kings. So, when Yazid dies, there's civil war, and then within Banu Umayyah, then Marwan becomes the king. Marwan dies with about a year, and then his son Abdul Malik becomes the king. Abdul Malik is king for like 20 years. And then his son Walid, and then you have the rest of Banu Umayyah, eventually. So, but there were 9 years there that you have to remember that Abdullah ibn Zubair was ruling over in Hijaz. So he was ruler in Makkah and Medina and Taif, and actually had control of most of the empire for the beginning of those 9 years. Then it started to dwindle, and then eventually he was locked, locked into Mecca. And then this is, Abdul Malik, sends the army, and Hajjaj, kills Abdullah ibn Zubair, radiallahu anhu. And so you have to remember that. So these kings, they would have people do all of these things, kind of cursing. They wanted to have the people curse their opponents. So so after Mansur, you get Mahdi. So Mahdi was king for a short time because his mother didn't want him to be king. His mother wanted his younger brother Harun to be the king. So, and there was, issues between the two of them. Each one tried to poison each other. Mahdi sent some food for his mother. Mother suspected some stuff, so she gave it to the dog. The dog died. She eventually won out and poisoned her son. Now, this is how kings work. If you look at kingdoms, it's always a mess. Because their whole objective is not pleasure of Allah and His Messenger. So their objective is to maintain control, rule. So Mahdi dies, and then Harun becomes the king. Before Mahdi dies, Mahdi imprisoned Imam Musa Kazim. Because again, these are people who, so Mansur, the predecessor, is the one who had, or the father is the one who had Imam Jafar Sadiq poisoned, 148. And now Imam Musa Kazim kind of takes over. It's interesting though, when Imam Jafar Sadiq, before he was poisoned, or before he was killed, he said that I'm leaving 5 people as my heirs, or as my, as far as my lineage, not worldly heirs as far as what I'm, people are inheriting from me physically. He said, I'm leaving 5 people. The first person he says Mansur, the king. The second person was the governor of Medina, who was appointed by the king. Neither one of them were decent people. The third person was his oldest son, Abdullah. The second, or the fourth heir was his younger son, Imam Musa Kazim. And then the fifth heir was his wife. So after Imam Jafar Sadiq is poisoned, Mansur, he starts thinking, he says, oh, his heirs are going to give me trouble too. So I need to nip this in the bud. So let me just finish them all off. Let me finish them off right away. So he sends word to the governor of Medina, and he says, I want you to apprehend and to kill the heir of Imam Jafar Sadiq. So the governor writes him back a letter. He says, well, you're the first on the list. So this basically averted, Imam Abdullah, his son, the son of Imam Jafar Sadiq, and Musa Kazim, and all of those from getting killed. So he says, well, you're the first on the list, so if we're going to kill his heirs, you got to go first. So then what happens, of course, Mahdi, when he becomes the king, he imprisons Imam Musa Kazim. And so then he sees in a dream, he sees Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu Wajh. And Sayyidina Ali Karamallahu Wajh tells him, he says, release my son. Otherwise, my dagger will be in you. And so he gets up and immediately has him released. Of course, after he dies, his brother Harun Rashid becomes the king. And so Harun also has him imprisoned. And so when he has him imprisoned, after a while, eventually, he's released. What they would do is the kings would imprison these people, torture them as basically a deterrent for anyone who wants to follow them, and then they'd release them. So basically, kind of from Urdu standpoint, be'izzati karna, kind of showing, oh, these people, they have no respect, they have no honor. Why do you associate yourself with these people? They're nothing, they're worthless. So they try to discredit them this way. And I'll get back to the last time when he was in prison, and then eventually he's poisoned as well by Harun. But I want to tell a few incidences regarding him. First is Shaqiq al-Balkhi, rahmatullah alayhi. So Shaqiq al-Balkhi, amongst the people of Tasawwuf, very well known. He was Tabi, those who saw the companions. Very pious, very righteous person. And so one year he was going on the Hajj, and he sees this young man, in very fettered clothing, sandals kind of messed up. The clothing was very kind of, you look at him and you thought he was a beggar. And so that's what he thinks. He thinks, it's beggar. And in his mind, he's thinking, this guy, he's just joined this caravan headed toward the Hajj, just to kind of get something from the people. So he's thinking, he's going to cause trouble for these people. So he walks toward him with the intention of telling him, look, don't be trouble for these people. Just, I'll give you something and you can go and whatever. So when he walks towards him, the man looks up at him and he says, Shaqiq, you shouldn't think bad of people. And so, Shaqiq is like, whoa. Yeah, I didn't even, how's he know my name? And not only does he know my name, he knew the intention of why I'm coming towards him. So, he's kind of taken aback. So he says, okay, well, he just kind of scoops away. And then at this, the caravan, they pause at another area, and now, he sees that same young man making salat. And so now he says, I need to ask this man for forgiveness. I don't know who he is, but obviously he's somebody special. So he waits, and Imam Musa Kazim, he finishes salat, and as soon as he finishes salat, he starts to walk towards him again, and Imam Musa Kazim says to him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who are repentant. So again, he knew why he's coming towards him. So, but still, he hasn't mustered up the courage to ask him, who are you? So they get to this other place, and there's a well, and Imam Musa Kazim is drawing water from the well, bucket and with the rope. And the rope slips from his hands, and the bucket falls into the well, and then he makes dua. He says, oh Allah, your servant, do not deprive your servant of being able to make wudu so he can pray to you. And he says, and the bucket just came up on its own. And he takes the water and he starts, he makes wudu. And then a little later on, after he makes salat, he's taking that same water and he's mixing it with the dirt, and he's eating the dirt. He says, but Shaqiq, he says that I knew this is someone special. So he goes, he sits next to him, and he says, can I also have something? In appearance, it looks like, yeah, he's eating dirt, but he says, can I also? And so he says, he gave him. some stuff, and he says, when I ate it, it was like the best sattu. Sattu is crushed grains that they make like cereal out of, used in traveling, and this is, it's also mentioned in the hadith, so various grains that they would crush together and make it basically a powdered cereal. So it's like the best sattu I'd ever eaten. So he says, then we continued on, and when they arrived at the Hajj, you see all of these people gathering around him. So he said, obviously, these people know who he is. So he asked one of them, who is this? And then he found out, oh, this is Imam Musa Kazim. And then he says, oh, then now everything makes sense, because all of this is their inheritance. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them because of their nisbah, or their connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's one incident. The other incident is, we've talked about this before, I'm going to reiterate this. You know a teacher by his students. So you look at like Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam. Of course, Imam Ja'far is Imam Ja'far Sadiq, but then you look at his students. Even, Orientalist scholars have to admit that Imam Ja'far Sadiq gave the world 400 gems. 400 scholars that were pioneers in their fields through Imam Ja'far Sadiq. Jabir ibn Hayyan, who is the most famous of them, who is the father of modern day chemistry. You look at the area of physics, mathematics, algebra, all of that knowledge comes back to Imam Ja'far Sadiq. Right? So, and if you look at these people as well, because people kind of say, oh, these are just, these are not people of knowledge, which is the furthest thing of truth. Again, knowledge is it's their lot. This is, their property. Even in the books of the hadith, you see their names. These are narrators of the hadith, and they are considered by the muhaddiseen as what they refer to as thiqa, which means that when they are in a chain, if the rest of the chain is solid, then there's no doubt. These are people whose knowledge was solid, their aqeedah is solid, so their belief is solid. There's no doubt about their memory, about any aspect of their character. And so another famous person, Bishr Hafi, better known or translated into the barefooted Bishr. So if you read his story, he was a drunk. He was a very wealthy drunk. So this is a man who was well-to-do, loved his liquor, stayed drunk a lot. Because he had, when you have a lot of money and don't know what to do with it, well, instead of spending it where you should be spending it, giving sadaqah, because that mindset, oh, I worked hard for this. This is mine. I'm not giving it to anybody. And you see that, people today. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to you for a purpose. Well, when you don't have purpose, then you do stupid stuff. Same thing back then, same thing today. So one day in his drunken state, he was walking through the streets and he sees a piece of paper with the name of Allah written on it. And even though he's drunk, he's able to recognize what's written on it. And he has enough sense, he picks it up, he cleans it off, puts some perfume on it, and puts it up on a high shelf to honor the name of Allah. And so that night, he sees a dream in which he is told that you honor the name of Allah and Allah will honor your name. Most people only tell you this part of the story. There is a second part to the story, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to honor his name, but how will he honor his name? Bishr Hafi didn't just become the well-known Bishr Hafi by himself. So the next day, he wakes up, and of course, he saw a dream. Saw a dream. All right. So a lot of times, you see something, you just kind of brush it off. So same thing, he kind of brushed it off. Party's going on in his house, and during the party, he has a slave girl who comes out of the house to throw some stuff out. And Imam Musa Kazim is passing by. This is how his name is going to get honored. Imam Musa Kazim is passing by, and he asks the slave girl, he says, is the master of this house a free man or a slave? And she's kind of taken aback by the question. What type of question is this? Of course, she says, he's a free man. He said, yes. He says, because if he was a slave, then he would not behave this way. Meaning, if he was the true slave of Allah, he would not be behaving this way. And he says this, and he walks away. And so when she goes in, she tells Bishr, he says, there's a man outside. I don't know who it was, but this is what he said. He made this statement. When Bishr hears this, it changed his world. So he comes running out, looking for that man, and eventually catches up with the man and becomes his disciple. That man is Imam Musa Kazim. And he ran out in such a rush that he didn't put his shoes on. And so after that, he always walked barefooted. And this is why he became known as Bishr Hafi, the barefooted Bishr. And when they asked him, why don't you put any shoes? He said that this was the condition I was in when guidance came to me. And so this is, so this is the effect that these people have. I mean, he didn't give him a long lecture. Because our hearts are empty, we give these long lectures and nothing happens. He just asked him one question. And a question, if you asked anybody else that same question, like that girl, like that slave girl, she said, what type of question is this? What are you asking? And so that's one incident. The other incident, or the other well-known student of his, is known as Bahlul. And Bahlul Dana, which means the very intelligent Bahlul. Even though in the community he was considered crazy. Everybody thought, oh, he's nuts, he's lost it. But that was on purpose. So the story behind him is that he also is a disciple of Imam Musa Kazim. And he's very loyal to his sheikh. But he is also a relative of Harun Rashid. And he is also in the court of Harun. And so when Harun started making plans to come against Imam Musa Kazim, and not only to come against Imam Musa Kazim, but also to arrest and torture all of his disciples. So he, of course, being in the court of Harun, being one of Harun's men, he has insider information, he knows what's coming down. So he comes running to his sheikh, and he says to his sheikh, he says, this is what they're planning. So Imam Musa Kazim simply says Jim. Didn't say anything else, he just said Jim. So some of the students, they took Jim to mean Jabal, meaning run off into the mountains, hide yourself in the mountains. So they did that. Some of the students took Jim to mean Jila Watan, which means, exile yourself from your land, go to some foreign land, which is what they did. Bahlul took Jim to mean Junoon, which means crazy. So Bahlul now starts acting crazy. doing strange things, living in the graveyard. One time someone came to him in the graveyard and said, why do you live here? You could, well, we'll build you a house. We'll build you a house over, some nice house, some nice place. He said, why should I leave this place? People are dying to come here. They are dying to come here. Why should I leave? So, but there are many stories of Bahlul, which I'm not going to go into. But this is how Bahlul became known. This is why he became known, because everybody thought he was crazy. But, you look at the advice he would give. Not just to anybody. He would give advice to the kings. And he would give advice to the common man. But you look at the advice he would give, and it was like, oh, well, the depths of his knowledge. Why? Because of his association with Imam Musa Kazim. What eventually leads to his arrest and him being poisoned in jail, Imam Musa Kazim, which was around the year 183 Hijri. So he was quite old at this time. You think about it, born around 128. So, well, for those people he was quite old, because many of them are martyred well before that. So, 128 to 83. So he's 53, 55 years old. Yeah. These days, 55 years old, and you still haven't gotten, off of the video games. So what happens is that Harun comes for the Hajj. And Harun, of course, you come for the Hajj, you stop in Medina Munawwara, and he goes to the Rawda of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Imam Musa Kazim is also there. And Harun, he addresses Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Assalamu alayka ya ibn ammi. Which means, of course, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he says, Salam, O the son of my uncle. Because they wanted to show the people, oh, we're very close to him. So Imam Musa Kazim, when he addresses Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, Ya Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah. Assalamu alayka ya Jaddi. So, Ya Jaddi meaning, oh my forefather. So Harun says, how are you his son? How is he your forefather? Your lineage goes to Ali, radiallahu. And then Ali is the son of Abu Talib. And this is Banu Abbas are the ones who started calling Abu Talib Kafir. They would say, because they would say to the progeny of Hassan and Hussein, you're the sons of Kafir. This is where that starts. So that's important to understand why that started and how that got started. And then you can understand the narrations better. So he says to him, he says, how can you say this? Your lineage is from Ali, from Abu Talib, not from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Imam Musa Kazim, he says to Harun, he says, well, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to Isa alayhi salam as the son of Ibrahim, as the descendant of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Yet, he has no father. So you can't say that he's from the father's side. He only has a mother. And so from the mother, then, so here, if Isa alayhi salam can be the descendant of Ibrahim alayhi salam because of his mother's connection to Ibrahim alayhi salam, then why can we not be the descendant of Rasulullah because of our Fatima salamullah alayhi's connection to Rasulullah? But he doesn't stop there, because that one someone can still say, but, Somebody still, but, which they always do. Then he mentions the verse in the Quran, again, referring to the Quran always, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the verse of Mubahila, where the Christians of Najran came and they debated with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in the end of the debate, of course, they lost, but they said, but, we still don't accept you. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we'll do Mubahila, that each side brings each other and makes dua that whoever is the liar, Allah's curse be upon them. And in that verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Abna'ana wa abna'akum, wa nisa'ana wa nisa'akum, wa anfusana wa anfusakum. That we bring our sons, you bring your sons. We bring our women, you bring your women. We bring ourselves, you bring yourselves. And he says, who did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam take as his sons? Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Who did he take as the women? Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha. Because she represented all women. She was going as a daughter, as a wife, and as a mother. And who did he take as his own self? Ali radiallahu anhu. So, of course, Harun has no response to this. Harun also realizes that, this is going to cause more issues. Because these are the people who mandated that, when the writers of hadith were writing down hadith, that they could not say, Qala Rasulullah, you could not put sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. You could only put sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Because they wanted everybody to forget the al, forget the progeny, because it's from the progeny that they stole the kingship. Because if the people remember the progeny, then they understand the illegitimacy of Banu Abbas. And they didn't want that. So here also, so after this, he eventually has him jailed and then eventually martyred or poisoned in jail. Another point here also is, as far as even if I talk about lineage, if I ask anybody whose blood do they have within them, they'll tell you that they have the blood of their father, because the lineage is from the father. They have the blood of the mother as well, but from lineage standpoint, the blood of the father. Ali is the son of Abu Talib, the uncle of Rasulullah. So Hazrat Abu Talib radiallahu anhu is the father of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. And yet Rasulullah says about Sayyidina Ali, or says to Sayyidina Ali, rather, he says, Jismika jismi, lahmaka lahmi, damaka dami. So Rasulullah is addressing Ali, rather, and saying that your body is my body, your flesh is my flesh, your blood is my blood. And then Rasulullah also said, if this isn't enough, then he also said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed the lineage of every prophet in their own loins. And he placed my lineage in the loins of Sayyidina Ali. So all of this proof, but people still choose not to accept. And of course, Imam Musa Kazim, he didn't quote any hadith, he quoted only the Quran. Because if he had quoted hadith, then they would have said, we don't accept this, we don't accept that, like people do today. So he quoted the Quran. And then he left it at that. He gave him 2 proofs from the Quran, and 2 proofs should be enough. So, again, these, and getting back to why we're talking about these people. The Rasulullah said, teach your children 3 things. Hubb nabiyaka, the love of your prophet. Hubb ahl bayti, the love of his household. And tilawat al-Quran, recitation of Quran. So we focus on the tilawat al-Quran, but we forget the rest. So even before tilawat al-Quran, the other 2 should be established. And this is why we're going over these, because these are the areas that are neglected. And so, and there is no acceptance of any ibadah without the love of Ahlul Bayt. Doesn't matter what you do, to the extent that you can be making salat in the haram while you're fasting and die while you're in sajda. If you don't have the love of Ahlul Bayt, that all of that worship will not do you any good. So I'll end here, or sort of end here today. I guess, any questions?
I got one.
Okay.
So, the student, you said, when you said change, they all took something different. Was any of them wrong when they took it different, or?
No. Yeah, that was his brilliance. These are people. So the question is, when Imam Musa Kazim said Jim, and you have all these others, some who ran to the mountains, some who exiled themselves into foreign lands, and of course Bahlul was the only one who took it as Junun. He was the exception to all of the other students. So the question is that were they wrong, the others who didn't take that meaning of it? And the answer is no. And this is the brilliance of these teachers, and that's why he simply said Jim. Because Jim can have many meanings, and depending on the understanding of the student and the level of the student, they will do things differently. So Bahlul was the one who could take it to that level, but not all the other students were at that level. Okay. So, and it was also important that some of them leave and go into foreign lands so that they could continue to spread the message as well. So this way everything gets taken care of. Bahlul, of course, is different also because he is related to Harun, to the king. So it's hard for the king to do anything against him. So he can stay in the area, still mix with the people that are there, and still spread the message. Whereas others left and went into other areas and spread the message there. So none of them were wrong. And again, like I said, this is the brilliance of teachers like this, who know that not every student is at the same level. And not every student should be at the same level. Everybody has their own qualities that they excel in. And this is why, like the school systems here today, why are they failing? Because of the stupid rule of no child left behind. Because they think everybody should end up at the same point. That's not possible. We don't start at the same point. We're not going to end up at the same point. And this, this notion that, oh no, even if we don't start at the same point, we should all end up at the same point. Again, that's not reasonable. That's not the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the system. He tests us in different ways, right? Not everybody's test is the same. Some are tested with poverty, some are tested with wealth. Some are tested with both, and some are tested with, certain temptations, others other temptations. Again, it's how we react to the situation. And do we do what we know is right? Do we adhere? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as we mentioned in the beginning, is that complete package. And then within the Ahlul Bayt, you have, various packages that emphasize a different aspect. Right? So this is part of all this lesson. And this is why we talk about all of these people, because there are lessons for all of us. Right? This is why, people say, oh, just follow Allah and the Messenger. Well, how do I follow the Messenger? How do I know how to follow the Messenger? There are things in which I cannot follow the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? He fasted continuously for 40 days, nothing to eat, nothing to drink, 40 days. We can't do that. In fact, he forbade us from doing it. So I can't follow him in that. That's where I look at the companions, but then also, how do I understand the Quran? I have to look at Ahlul Bayt. So, I mean, that's a good question. They were all right depending on what level and how they, but they also, again, they all had their purpose. You had.
Who was ruled for 9 years, was the companion of Muhammad al-Baqir.
Yeah, so the question is, I sort of alluded to this. I mentioned this a few weeks back as well. So Abdullah ibn Zubair radiallahu anhu, so he ruled for roughly 9 years. He is a companion of Rasulullah. He is Sahabi. He is also the son of Sahabi. So his father, Zubair bin Awam, is the cousin of Rasulullah. So his, from the mother's side. So his mother is Bibi Safiya, who is the sister of Hamza. So she is the aunt of Rasulullah. So Abdullah ibn Zubair, Zubair bin Awam's wife is Asma bint Abu Bakr. So Abdullah ibn Zubair on his father's side is the son of Sahabi. He himself is Sahabi. On his mother's side is the son of Sahabi, is the grandson of Sahabi, is the great-grandson of Sahabi. So after Yazid attacked Medina Munawwara, Abdullah ibn Zubair led the uprising, and eventually Yazid dies when he attacks Makkah, and then Abdullah ibn Zubair is in control. At that time, Imam Zain al-Abidin was in Medina Munawwara, and Imam Muhammad Baqir, and Imam Hassan Muthanna was also in Medina Munawwara. Imam Zain al-Abidin was a young man at that time, or young boy at that time in Medina Munawwara, as was Abdullah Ma'ab alayhi salam. So there was a time, where they didn't have a lot of pushback. When Hajjaj conquered Hijaz and killed or martyred Abdullah ibn Zubair, Abdul Malik, of course, was the king, so he took over all of this. And when they invaded Medina and Hajjaj came in, the orders were that they didn't want to do anything to Imam Zain al-Abidin, because they know if they did something to him, it would attract a lot of attention. But Imam Hassan Muthanna, they felt comfortable enough to torture him. And so they brought him out in front of the people and ordered him to curse Abdullah ibn Zubair, or the progeny of Zubair, which he refused. And they flogged him, they whipped him. And he continued to refuse. And he stood his ground, and he did not. Same thing like with Imam Zayd, when, his generals wanted him to curse Abu Bakr and Umar, and he refused. And they, of course, abandoned him. So, you see, this is why I say there is no stronger defender of the Sahaba than Ahlul Bayt. Any other questions? So, inshallah, we'll end here today. We'll pick up, we'll talk about Imam Ali Rida next week and see who is the son of Imam Musa Kazim. Kazim, the title Kazim means the one who controls his anger. Because he was tested a lot, people, being tortured by the king coming and saying stupid stuff, or sending people to say stupid stuff, like, the argument of, how is he your forefather? But he controlled himself and would calmly respond to their stupidity. So that's where the title Kazim comes from. So inshallah we'll end here. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept us and give us His true love and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all of those whom they love. And may He give strength to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and all of those who are being oppressed, and give them victory over their oppressors. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alaikum assalam.
Right.